What's up, guys? Dean Bokhari coming back at you today with another episode of FlashNotes TV. And today we've got a book summary for you. I've got the Kindle version. I know you're used to the hardcovers, but the library is getting a little intense here. So I've got the Kindle version on 0 to 1, written by Peter Thiel and Blake Masters. Now, who is Peter Thiel? Who is Blake Masters? Why did they write the book? Well, Peter Thiel is a billionaire investor. He's the creator of PayPal, and he's assembled teams of people who have gone on to build billion-dollar companies. So he's either worked with these people, inspired these people, or invested in their ideas. And I'm talking about people like Elon Musk, who went on to build SpaceX and to found Tesla Motors. People like Reid Hoffman, who created and started LinkedIn. People like Steve Chen, Chad Hurley, Javed Karim, who together founded YouTube. And then some of the guys who started Yelp. Russell Simmons, Jeremy Stoppelman, David Hacks, who founded Yammer, and he himself, again, who has started PayPal, and more recently, a company called Palantir that works a lot with like the government and CIA and like all that stuff. It's a software company. So basically, I mean, this guy's no joke. It's basically like tapping into this just wide array of ideas and like thought-provoking ideas when you pick up this book. And I really enjoyed reading it. I want to share with you 3 of the key takeaways, key insights from the book in this 10-minute FlashNotes TV episode for you here, okay? So let's just jump right into it because time's running out and I really want to get to it. So the first key idea here is to learn to go from 0 to 1. The title of the book is titled 0 to 1. What does that mean, right? So let's quote Teal here. Doing what we already know how to do takes the world from 1 to N, adding more of something familiar. So 1 to N equals adding more of something familiar, something we already know. But every time we create something new, we go from 0 to 1. The act of creation is singular, as is the moment of creation, and the result is something fresh and something strange. So he really spends a great deal of the preface in the first chapter kind of talking about this whole concept of going from 0 to 1. So basically 1 to N means, for instance, a lot of what people do these days, which is copy somebody else's idea and kind of rehash that idea and create something of their own, like stamping their own package or a logo or colors or whatever, and packaging it and presenting it and promoting it in a different way, but essentially it being the same product as somebody else that came out with something previously. So they modeled something that was already out, and that isn't creating something new. That's not going from 0 to 1. That's going from 1 to N. Going from 0 to 1 is literally creating an idea or a product or a service that has never been done before. The true meaning of the word innovation, which means to create something new, never seen before, brand new. So not rehashing the same old thing, but creating literally something new, and that's what it means to go from 0 to 1. And so how do you do that? You know, that's what we're going to jump into in the next piece here. So the first idea to keep in mind, now that you know what it means to go from 0 to 1, is to not be afraid to ask contrarian questions. What does that mean? Well, contrarian questions, to quote Teal, conventional beliefs only ever appear arbitrary and wrong in retrospect. Whenever one collapses, we call the old belief a bubble, but the distortions caused by bubbles don't disappear when they pop. The internet craze of the 1990s was the biggest bubble since the crash of 1929, and the lessons learned afterward define and distort almost all thinking about technology today. That's a key point there. So the first step to thinking clearly is to question what we think we know about the past. Again, the first step to thinking clearly is to question what we think we know about the past. So essentially, have we made false assumptions based on a dramatic event that's occurred? And Teal says that yes, we have. And that's what essentially brings us to the current paradigm of business and startup thinking that we have today, saying that he basically gives the example that Silicon Valley entrepreneurs learned 4 big lessons from the dot-com crash that still guides business thinking today. And those 4 lessons being, the first one is that they say, and you've probably heard of this if you've read other startup books or heard conventional startup thinking. And what they'll tell you is to make incremental advances, meaning take small steps, just, don't do too much at once, and remain flexible and all that. And then the other piece of advice they'll tell you about, which is the second lesson in this current/old or assumed paradigm that we're in, is to stay lean. We've all heard that said before, right? Stay lean and flexible. And then the third lesson is to improve on the competition. Figure out who's doing what you want to do, or look at something that has already been proven to be successful and then model it, sort of copy it essentially, or improve upon it, okay? Which oftentimes doesn't result in anything new. It doesn't result in an innovation of some sort, but rather it just results in, like we said, again, just taking something, copying it, slapping a new logo, changing up the colors a little bit, repackaging it, representing it, and getting it out there, promoting it, and then, trying to profit from it. But as we'll talk about here shortly, all that does is contribute to the competitive nature of the market, which, as we'll discuss here in the next key insight, competition is very, very bad. It's different from capitalism. Capitalism and competition are 2 inherently different things. Well, we'll get into that in a second. So, and then the next lesson he talks about in the old paradigm here is to focus. People say focus on product, not sales. So if you build something good enough, then people will come and buy it. You don't have to worry about selling it. And so according to Teal, he basically says that these 4 lessons were mistakenly accepted as dogma based on these false assumptions because of the mistakes of the past. And he says, no. What we really should be doing is the opposite of these assumptions that we've made based on the past. Okay, so, and when I talk about based on the past, I'm referring to like the dot-com crash and all the craziness and how people thought that there was a lot of opportunity there, so there was a lot of investment there, and then once that crashed and got all screwed up, kind of like the real estate bubble of 2008, people pulled away, and instead of investing, they did the opposite, right? Instead of looking for a balance or really thinking about it critically. And so let's talk about Teal's proposals here. So he says that the new way of thinking should essentially be, first, to think about it in that it's better to risk being bold than to risk coming up with like a trivial business idea that isn't really going to shift the world forward in any way, shape, or form. And the second piece he talks about is that instead of trying to think about being lean and flexible, understand that just having a plan, even if it's a bad plan, is better than having no plan, which is often what people end up doing when they try to be as lean and flexible as possible. So he says a bad plan is better than no plan. Put a plan together, have a blueprint and a vision for the future of what you want to create, and start executing against that plan. And then the next lesson he talks about is that competitive markets destroy profits. Okay, so you don't improve upon the competition like it says before, because all that does is create something that's already been created and puts just another product out in the market that adds to the competition, the competitive nature of the marketplace. When there's something else and there's more added to it, then that increases the supply, which if the demand doesn't increase along with it, which is what often happens when something gets popular, competition increases, prices go down, and everybody loses money. Okay, so he talks about how competitive markets destroy profits. So, and then finally, the next lesson here is that selling matters, right? It doesn't matter how great or wonderful or innovative of a product you create, if that product isn't distributed properly, marketed appropriately, and sold to the people that you want to sell it to your target market, then it'll just sit there. You'll hear crickets. Nothing will get sold. So selling matters. And then finally, before we move on to the next piece here, he talks a lot about contrarian questions, asking contrarian questions. And the one question that if you could ask yourself moving forward would be, what important truth do very few people agree with you on? What important truth? What is it that you believe that nobody else or very few people agree with you on, also believe? And if you want to create a business out of that, the business version of the question is, what valuable company is nobody building? So ask that question, what important truths do you believe or believe in that nobody else or very few people agree with you on? And how can you turn that into something that you can monetize or build a business off of or found an organization based upon that belief or new truth of yours, right? How can you innovate on that? Really and truly innovate, not the buzzword version of the innovation but really innovate based upon a contrarian truth that you have or a belief that you have. So, what valuable company is nobody building? Okay, so the third key insight, key idea here as we're running out of time is to finally avoid competition at all costs. Okay, so Teal basically says, quote, Americans mythologize competition and credit it with saving us from socialist breadlines. Actually, though, competition and capitalism are opposites. Capitalism is premised on the accumulation of capital, but under competition, or perfect competition, as he says, all profits get competed away, sort of like we talked about a second ago. The lesson for entrepreneurs is clear. If you want to create and capture lasting value, do not build an undifferentiated commodity business, therefore contributing to the nature of the competitive markets. It really makes sense if you think about it. And so, I mean, if you add to the competition, if you create more of what's already been created, and you put that out there for the world, and the world isn't continuously asking for it, and you aren't doing eons better than the people who have already created it and established themselves, then you're not going into something that allows you to differentiate yourself. You're not going into something that allows you to capture the market and get real big share market, and you're really setting yourself up for failure. So that's essentially what he's saying here and really trying to clarify, oftentimes drill home throughout this book. And so he said, I mean, in terms of another piece here, just to sort of clarify, competition isn't always necessarily completely bad. In like a narrowly defined activity like swimming, for instance, like a sport, if you're competing, then that can help you improve. But in the sport of business, not necessarily, because competition in terms of the marketplace just does nothing more than get you a one-way ticket to bankruptcy court. And then, so what do you do instead of competing? You build what he calls a monopoly. Now, a monopoly sounds kind of bad and weird and just like very like, dark side, but really the way that he describes it is actually pretty cool. So the way he just defines a monopoly, to close out with this, a monopoly means new products that benefit everybody and sustainable profits for the creator. Competition means no profits for anybody, no meaningful differentiation, and a struggle for survival. So why do people believe that competition is healthy? The answer is that competition is not just an economic concept or a simple inconvenience that individuals and companies must deal with in the marketplace. More than anything else, competition is an ideology, the ideology that pervades our society and distorts our thinking. We preach competition, internalize its necessity, and enact its commandments. And as a result, we trap ourselves within it. Even though the more we compete, the less we gain. I love that. So to combat competition, you create a monopoly. You build a monopoly. What's a monopoly? A monopoly is a company that has the majority of control over a specific market. So it's the old, the niches are in the riches are in the niches, saying. In that you want to identify a target market, a specific niche market that you can serve, that you can create something new for, and you want to dominate that specific market, that niche. And you want to focus specifically on one market, one big idea that you can innovate within and dominate that niche for, and then eventually broaden out. A great example of this is Google. So Google is a big old monopoly. They have dominated the search engine, the search engine game. Yahoo, Bing. Nobody else uses that as a word. They don't say Google. They don't say Bing it. They don't say Yahoo it. We say Google it, right? Google has dominated it. They've become the Kleenex of tissues. Like they are a true monopoly. So they quickly, just before we close it out, we're already out of time. Essentially, just for you to create a monopoly, sorry guys, for you to create a monopoly, you just want to look at a specific market that's underserved, underdeveloped, that hasn't been reached, that you can serve with your product, your idea, your services, and you want to get in there and dominate that specific market. You want to create a monopoly. That will allow you to sustain yourself in your business. And a monopoly, if there's competition, if there's a lot of competition there, then it's not possible for you to create a monopoly unless you or your product or your organization, your business is at least 10 times better than those who are competing in the same pool. Thanks so much, guys. That's it. We're out of time. Thank you so much for tuning into this FlashNotes TV episode. If you want to get the actual FlashNotes for this, they're formatted for every single device. It's like a 6 to 8 page PDF that you can get. We've got the Kindle version, we've got the iBooks version, as well as the entire audio version, MP3 version that you can listen to anywhere on your drive to work, in bed, on your iPod, on your Android, whatevs, wherever you go, whatever format you like to read or listen to or watch, we've got FlashNotes formatted in that specific format. So if you want to pick them up, more business books, leadership books, and personal growth books for busy professionals, visit getflashnotes.com. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next video.